Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video I'm going to be doing my top drugstore concealers for pale skin video. Now I've got 6 concealers here today to talk about, and I'm going to go in the order from the highest coverage to the lowest coverage, and I'm also going to say for each concealer whether it doesn't crease or it creases minimally, and then I haven't included any concealers that crease a lot on me because what's the point, I don't really like them ones. So I'm going to swatch all these concealers on the back of my hand as well, so you can sort of judge the colour against my skin tone to see whether you think this concealer would be suitable for you. Now the first concealer I'm going to talk about today is the Revolution Pro Full Cover Camouflage Concealer in the shade C1. It just comes in a little squeezy tube like this, and this is the most full coverage concealer that I'm going to talk about today. Personally, I don't really like this concealer for using under the eyes, although you can do that. But what I really like this for is for putting over blemishes, because it is so full coverage. It just, if you've got red marks, spots, it just completely covers them. And it's really amazing. So this is the colour here, as you can see, in the shade C1. Revolution have a great shade range in this concealer, and they also do a C2 shade, which I believe is a little more pink than this F1 shade, which is kind of neutral. Yeah, so I'd say, because I don't really use it under the eyes, creasing isn't a problem because it doesn't crease on spots. But if you did use this under the eyes, I'd say it would minimally crease, just because it's quite an oily concealer, which is another thing that might put some people off if you have oily skin. I'm not sure how this would hold up on you, because I think it is quite an oily concealer, but for me with dry skin, like, it's amazing, especially when you've got spots and they're kind of dried out from whatever spot treatment you've put on. This just doesn't emphasise dryness at all, so I really like it. The next concealer I'm going to talk about is the Maybelline Instant Age Eraser Concealer with Goji Berry and Halo X, I don't know how to say that, Haloxyl, in the shade 00 Ivory. Now this is a recent expansion to their range. They only used to have 2 shades in the UK, none of which were pale enough, but now this is the palest shade, Ivory, and it is pretty pale. I'll just swatch it. It's like a sponge tip applicator, so you kind of twist it up and product comes out. Here is the Maybelline Concealer next to that Revolution Pro one. As you can see, it's a little bit more yellow, I'd say, but I'd still say it was pretty neutral, and it's pretty fair. You can see my hand is very fair. So yeah, this is a great concealer for pale skin, and at the moment it's one of my favourite concealers. I'm using it near enough every day, because this one is like one of the very few concealers that actually like doesn't crease at all on me, provided that obviously the under eye area is moisturised and I don't use too much setting powder. If I'm like really tired and I've got bags and stuff, sometimes this can minimally crease, but generally I'd say this is a great one for not creasing. This Maybelline concealer is, I'd say, it's kind of a medium coverage, but a high medium coverage. You can sort of build this up. Yeah, and it's a great affordable drugstore concealer for pale skin. Now the next concealer I've got to talk about is also a new expansion to an existing range, and this is the Collection Lasting Perfection Ultimate Wear Concealer in the new shade 0 Extra Fair. So here is the new collection concealer in the shade 0 Extra Fair. As you can see, this is quite a warm concealer, quite yellowy compared to the other one. There is the shade, the original shade was Fair 1, which was the lightest, and I've got that as well, because for a long time I did used to use this. I'll just swatch this next to it just for comparison. There is the shade 1 and there's the shade 0, so Fair and Extra Fair. You can just see the Extra Fair shade is more yellow than the original shade 1 and a little bit lighter. So I think this makes it better for really fair skinned people like me. Although to be honest, I did used to get away with this shade. You can get away with it, but it wasn't the lightest shade. Next concealer I've got is actually, although this is a drugstore video, it's not actually drugstore, but it's from Primark, which is basically drugstore price, cheaper than drugstore price. I think this was £2 this concealer, and this is the PS My Perfect Colour Liquid Concealer in the lightest shade they do, Porcelain. This concealer claims to be a medium coverage concealer, which I'd agree with. I'd say it's medium coverage, and it's got vitamin E and aloe vera in it. So I think this is, like, I have dry to normal skin, and I think this is what it's targeted for because it's quite like a moisturising concealer. So here is the Primark concealer down here in comparison to the other concealers I've already talked about, and I'd say it's quite a neutral leaning towards cool, as you can see, and I like this concealer. It offers decent medium coverage, and I'd say it like minimally creases. It's not 100% crease proof, but nothing bad that you wouldn't be able to wear it, sort of thing. Now the fifth concealer that I've got to show you today is another Maybelline concealer, and this is the Maybelline Fit Me concealer in the shade, I think it's 05. It's kind of rubbed off, which is one thing I don't like about this packaging. All the writing rubs off of it. This is also a shade expansion. The lighter shade used to be 15, which was too dark for me. They had a shade 10, but that was actually darker than 15, so it's a bit of a strange numbering system for their concealers. But this new shade 5, or 05, is a really good shade for very fair people. So there's the swatch there of the Maybelline Fit Me. Swatch it now, I'd say it's quite a warm toned concealer, once again, a bit like the Collection new shade. And I'd say this was like, a lot of people say this is full coverage, but on me, for some reason, I can't get it to be full coverage. So I'd say this is like a medium coverage. You could maybe build it up to high medium, but definitely not full coverage, but great for everyday wear if you're fair skinned. The final concealer I've got to show you today is this Lasting Finish Breathable Lightweight Medium Coverage Concealer from Rimmel London. And once again, it's one of those little like sponge tip applicators that seem to be all the rage at the moment. I'm just going to squirt some out on the back of my hand. Now there is the Rimmel London concealer next to all the others that I've swatched. And as you can see, this is like the fairest out of the bunch, and it's probably, I'd say, maybe the warmest out of the bunch, and also it doesn't swatch as well as the others, and that's because it's a very lightweight concealer, which it claims to be. It claims to be medium coverage. It says lightweight medium coverage. It's not medium coverage, it's a very light coverage concealer, which on the one hand I was a bit like, oh, should I include this? Because the thing with concealer, I think you want it to at least be medium coverage, because most likely you want to cover up bags or spots or things like that, blemishes. And with this, it's not going to do that because it just doesn't have the coverage. Anyhow, I've included this because it is the fairest out of the bunch that I've got here today. And it is a good concealer for, I think, if you want to layer concealers, if you've got a concealer you like, but it's a bit too dark for you, I think this would be a great one to lighten up the concealer. And also this, I wouldn't say it's completely creaseless, but I'd say it was like minimal creasing. So once again, if you combine it with a concealer that you really like on you that doesn't crease, but it may be a bit too dark, I think this would be a great sort of mixing concealer. So that's why I've included it in this video. So that was 6 of my favourite drugstore concealers for very pale skin. I hope you found this video useful, and if you've got any good drugstore concealers that you love and you're very fair skinned, please leave them down below in the comments, because I always love to try new concealers, and especially if you think they're really great and they don't crease, because I'm always on the hunt for that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching, and if you did, please like it, please subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.